Easy as. You good to go?
Whenever you're ready, mate.
Easy. All right. Welcome back to Lockdown Sports. It's me with a brand new face, Saj. Welcome onto the show.
What's up, everyone?
There's only like 5-10 people watching, and you know most of them, so you don't have to be shy. You don't have to be shy today. We're going to talk about the Manchester Derby, and it's sort of a focus this week. We're going to have on somewhat legacy talk. You know, you do it with your friends, and you see people do it on TV and get paid way too much to do it. So I thought we'd chip in with our own little views on what this Manchester Derby means for both sides of Manchester. And Saj, I'll just open up straight with you here. How much does this mean to you as a Man United fan?
As a United fan, this means a lot. I mean, we've always talked about how City will always be in the background of United. They'll never get to that point, the same history that we have. But we're entering those realms that they're going to get to a spot where only United have done these sort of things. We're talking about three-peats. We're talking about a possible treble as an English club. At that point, you can't deny them anymore. They will be part of the history of English football, top-tier English football.
And you know, it's been a painful like last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I'm not counting anymore. It's gotten that bad, but it's been painful as a United fan. And one of the few good memories over the past few years was that game where Pogba, Alexis Sanchez sort of stopped the title from being won against us. Of course, it was won the next week when we didn't win our game. But you know, one of those moments, and it's what I like to call the title of this video, the Asterisk. You know, we have an opportunity ahead of us to literally stop the one thing that makes our club unique from everyone else in England. And that's not an opportunity you usually get in football in your own hands, is it?
No, it's not. I know Ten Hag actually put out a comment saying they're not really focused on stopping City, but I'm certain it's in the mind of those players. I mean, look, again, you don't want City to be in the same breath as United. And if I'm a player, I don't want City anywhere near my team. So yeah, 100%. I'm playing 100% times harder.
Look, we've seen it time and time again. We can like deny City as much as you want, but we know one thing. Winning brought together the sort of united consortium of global fans that you have today. And that sort of thing is going to happen to the next generation. So whether we don't see it right now, you know, there's a generation of little kids supporting City because of the Aguero moment, because of De Bruyne's ability in general. You know, these guys are going to be the superheroes for the next generation. And that's why you see Sir Alex give PSG a fucking team talk before they're versing Man City. You don't see these things because we don't even consider them. We know they're a threat now, and I think we can give up that sort of like false image of them just being little noisy neighbors.
It's not just that; it's just the manner they're beating teams with. I mean, it's convincing. It's good football. It's I don't know. Even as a person who doesn't like City, I mean, I'm wearing a United jersey for God's sake, but it's just the way they're doing it is incredible.
Look, the when I watch City, it's different when it's a team you hate so much. You know, I feel like for the first few years, I didn't really appreciate the way they played. I was just like, what is this? They pass around too much. And then you delve deeper, and it's like, okay, they bring the game to a complete halt. You know, any momentum you have going into a game is just dead within the first 5 minutes because you are not touching that ball. And every time you lose it, you become more and more frustrated, and they just pack you inside half of the game, just inside your own half. And I think looking forward now to what's going to happen with United, and it's happened the last few years. You know, we're sort of this underdog in this City game, which plays to our advantage sometimes because we do play on the counter. How do you see that sort of going about? Because I'm sick of being this underdog in these games, and I think Ten Hag needs to build a plan to make us have a fair fight.
I think we're always going to go into this game as an underdog. It's just a matter of form. That City team is incredible, and they've, especially this back end of the season, I mean, they've had to go a long run without losing a game just to win the title, and they've done it. They've done it multiple times. So, yeah, I mean, it's inevitable us going in as underdogs. But I think that last game that we saw, the 2-1 win, even though it was a bit controversial, you can still see that there's tactics behind it that Ten Hag has implemented. That was a massive change from that 6-3 loss to the 2-1 win. It was a big change. it might be slightly different football to the type that United fans are used to seeing, but man, the tactics they were on point. If we're going to be completely honest, we shut down that team. Haaland barely
as much as you can.
Yeah, it's a relative term when you say shutting down City, but I'm thinking the impact players, right? You're thinking Haaland, you're thinking Kevin De Bruyne, and they had very minimal impact. And the one time that we managed to get Kevin De Bruyne get on the board, that's when we can see.
I agree. And what Ten Hag did in terms of sort of, I don't know what you guys want to call it, blitzing, man marking Haaland, and forcing as well Bernardo Silva, De Bruyne way back into their own half to collect the ball, with what Fred, Casemiro were doing, pushing up really aggressively. Now, I think there is a natural counter to it, and it's not something that Pep does immediately. And I was really worried when Haaland was being tracked all the way into the midfield by Rafa Varane and Luke Shaw at centre-back that game. Big open gaps for the wingers to run into, but the way City played that day, those wingers weren't making those runs. Mahrez, Foden, they wanted the ball to feet. And I think that was problematic. And you see, obviously, Grealish was able to get in the box in the end. But if they do make these direct runs that I think any footballer at the base level is capable of, and sometimes it feels like Pep does overthink things, but if he does figure this United system out, I think it could be a blowout.
Well, you've got a bunch of players in that City team that are elite at operating those half spaces, like De Bruyne and Mahrez. They love those tight areas. But if you look at that team, maybe Grealish is as direct as a player as they have in terms of making those runs. And we saw that last game where he was making that run, scored the goal. So yes, you're right. There is an easy counter to it, but it's very against City's nature.
Yeah.
Ireland's out of that pocket.
Yeah, it's interesting because we are definitely forcing them to do what they don't want to do, but it seems like such an easy solution for other teams. It's rare to think City's weakness is direct play with runs in behind the way we've been able to see. We've struggled over the last few years, but that's something that we've always been able to rely on. No matter who it is, Rashford, Martial, a lot of these guys have been able to provide goals, assists, and keep us in games and keep us in top four contention that way. And just going back to it, the game before, was it 6-3? I stopped counting eventually. But the 6-3 blowout, and a lot has changed since then for Ten Hag, And I was really worried the second half of the season. We've looked really leggy going into it. And do you think it's going to play any part of it, how leggy we've looked, or do you think it's just one more game at this stage?
I think that played a massive part of it. I mean, I know as a fan, it was hard not to get excited when we went on that run after the World Cup. But if you knew the depth of our squad, it was never going to last. At some point, it was going to slowly break down. I mean, we were playing how many games? And I think we played up to 10 games in the month of...
In a month, yeah.
Yeah, in March, something like that. Yeah. It's a stupid number of games. And I think that's why having the last couple of weeks where we only had one game a week. I know we had Chelsea and Fulham recently, but even then, we managed to get a lot of rotation out of that Fulham side. I think it makes a difference. The fact that we have 5 days break before the next game, that's a world of good. And yeah, you just hope that in that time, our players can recharge and we get the freshest 11 out there.
All right, so Erik ten Hag's called in sick. Saj, what are you doing this game to make sure Man United come out victorious?
I think the one change that I would make in terms of the typical starting 11, I'm taking Eriksen out and putting Fred in. I like the idea of having Fred marking De Bruyne. I think that was successful before, and I also just love the energy he played with against this last game against Fulham. I mean, he was immense. We probably would have lost that game if he didn't turn up the way he did.
100%.
So I'm definitely sticking Fred in there. I like the front three of Rashford, Martial, and Sancho on the right. I think something that could go with us that maybe City would struggle with is just the movement. I mean, Sancho is moving a lot better than he was at the beginning of the season. I've started to notice some of these runs that he's making in between the lines or even behind the lines that, if you're not tracking, he's a dangerous player. And Martial does the same sort of thing. He's a very annoying player at times where he just doesn't do enough on the ball. But one thing he consistently does is make those awkward runs. It frees up Rashford half the time. So those three is definitely my starting front line. In terms of the back, I think we just got to go with the best line. Shaw, Varane, Lindelof. and probably Wan-Bissaka this time. I just think he's better one-on-one, and I think in a game like this where we're not going to have a whole bunch of possession, Wan-Bissaka probably suits the situation a bit better than Dalot does.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. We're not going to have much of the ball this game, and when I'm thinking about how United need to set up this game, I think a lot of it is down to how City start the attack, you know. And it was a real problem for them. Obviously, they're playing a lot more of these centre backs in these wide positions and midfield, that sort of thing. And Pep's been able to coach these guys into starting attacks themselves, you know, allowing De Bruyne to play higher up the pitch. But if we can nullify these guys, if Kyle Walker is playing and he is the so-called point guard for this defense, if we can force those guys to make those decisions early on instead of De Bruyne, instead of Rodri, instead of John Stones, there are definitely a few guys that are weak on the ball and nowhere near the level of the other City players. And that's what I'm really hoping we're able to do, because it would be a shame if City just have 80% possession, let Gundogan, let Bernardo Silva, let De Bruyne take over. Anyways, I think we'll leave it there. Sad score predictions.
Oh, I'm going to go 2-1 United.
I was thinking that. I think that's the typical idea. That's the hope for United fans.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking this is going to go long, and it's going to be a 0-0 going into pens. And of course,
okay.
You know, I'm a firm believer in David De Gea. I don't know why you aren't, Saj. Obviously, I totally didn't put out a video last week saying De Gea needs to be sold and average goalkeeper. But
I did watch it. I'm not sure if anyone else.
Yeah, no. That's no issue there. But if I had to predict something, I'd go penalties and Manchester United to lose if my money was on the line. With my heart, however, I'm going to join you in the 2-1. Anyways, stay tuned, stay locked in, subscribe for more. We'll have more videos out soon.